back to Articulate with Steve McJones. You ready for a fresh new episode, hot out the oven? This week I got Everton Johnson, one of my buddies that I met during stand-up, actually, which is also the reason that I haven't been posting as frequently. You know, you got the stand-up, and then you got the work life, and then you got the groceries, and then the social life, and then throw a podcast on top of the whole thing, and, you know, it's just, things just gonna take some time, you know, and I'm also still trying to meet a lot of people, but yeah, Everton, when I met him out doing at 2 Street, like we talk about, he just has so much energy. And I mean, think of all those things, you know, all the lives you gotta live to do all these things and feel productive. And then, you know, it just takes so much energy, which is why I really enjoy being around Ev, because he's got that, you know, he's very charismatic and he's got that energy, which is kind of transferable through personalities a little bit. And yeah, I mean, he also is a very in-depth thinker about his you know, progression in life and kind of moving forward. So I was really fortunate to have him accept to be on and come talk about, you know, being freshman in stand-up comedy. We have a really great conversation for comedians who are starting out, and I think it's, you know, beneficial for other comedians who want to see what starting out is like as well. But also, I think it's interesting to see stand-up as an actual industry as itself, as opposed to, like, anytime I tell somebody I do stand-up, they're like, oh, so you're going to be famous one day, right? And it's like, I mean, it's just like any other industry. I mean, it really just depends on how much time and energy you put into it. So I think this conversation kind of helps it make it seem more real-worldly and, you know, hopefully help people relate to it a little bit. So yeah, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Everton Johnson. How you doing today, sir?
Really, really, really well, man. Thanks for dropping in. How's it going for you?
I'm doing well. I had a wonderful July 4th weekend, and I am ready to get back into it, to be honest. Ready to get back into that routine, start doing the stand-up again, bro.
What'd you get into this weekend?
Lots of fireworks, lots of drugs, lots of alcohol.
Drugs and alcohol. Damn, son. Right to it on America's Day.
Yeah.
America's Day.
How else are you supposed to celebrate, bro?
I know. Well, I mean, I don't know about that shit. I'm not like you people, bro. I actually had my anniversary this weekend.
Oh, yeah? Your anniversary with who?
With who? With the Lord. I've been a minister for 3 years now.
Is that true?
Yeah, bro. Oh, yeah, bro.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A little respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, so we're here today to talk about some stand-up, bro. That's how we met, right? We met at 2 Street, 2nd and Reed, a beautiful dive bar that lets us do our thing up there every Tuesday night. I love that place, man.
Great spot.
And me and Ev just kind of like got into it, started talking. He's got so much energy. I love it. He works with me on some jokes, and yeah, had to get him on to talk about it. Because
Freshman in comedy.
Yeah, freshman in comedy. Exactly. So that's what I wanted to talk about, because getting into it, like, I have not seen, I mean, you were telling me about Kevin Hart's podcast a little bit with where they talk about comedy, but
yeah,
I haven't seen many, or at least been recommended any, for starting comedians to like listen to for advice, or kind of like see how the journey goes for a lot of people. You know what I mean?
I mean, like, I get that. You got to look for them, but like also
right, exactly.
Also though, comedy's about the streets, bro. And I feel like the streets has never been that book version of things, you know, that knowing this how it goes, like, that's school. Like, school, you get lessons and you study and then you take a test. In the streets, you take a test and then you're supposed to take your lessons and study from those things.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate this art form from other art forms I got involved with, because this one is really about the soul, you know, and really saying, like, how can you roll with the punches?
Yeah.
And I think that, like, the current system, it weeds out the weaker people, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and see, that's, again, like, I just got out of school, so I'm still, like, in that mindset where I'm trying to, like, do everything by the book and try to, like, kind of build from a lesson type of structure.
Yeah, but lucky enough, I've always been both, you know? Lucky enough, I grew up in Camden, that just, like, connects right across from Ben Franklin. And both of my parents, they never went to school. And so we always used to do a bunch of street stuff, and you have to do a bunch of street stuff while you're out there. But I also went to all my schools, you know? So I went to a private school in high school, went to a Catholic school, then I went to a small liberal arts school to do my degrees in Jersey, you know?
Okay, and so is that where you kind of started your interest in stand-up specifically, or?
I'd always been interested in stand-up. Not gonna lie, I've always watched stand-up stuff. I remember when I was young, because I always had friends who were older than me. And so I remember being like, in my 10s, my boys had like the Dave Chappelle shit, the show on DVD box set. And so I would watch those and I would crack the fuck up.
Yeah.
And like I had been watching and I've been always watching all throughout college. I'd always watch tons of different stand-ups, you know. I always watched Mitch Hedberg. I always watched Mike Birbiglia. I always watched like Cat Williams. I always watched Earthquake. I always watched Patrice O'Neal stuff. And like it was until like this year when I was going through the pandemic that it just kept coming up. It just kept coming up. And then I was on the phone with my boy Christian, and I was like, "Oh, but like I'm nervous about it." And he was like, "I don't know why you of all people shouldn't be nervous. It almost seems like you're born to do it." And I was like, "All right, bro, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna see how it is." Yeah. And so it was really like seeing a recent stand-up show and having 2 bits of advice really hit me. Where I was like, "Oh, I took a girl on a date too. I took her out to Punchline.
Really?
Yeah, I took her out to Punchline to see some amateur shit on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it was the same shit. I saw the way the girl was like, got kind of impressed how it was, and I was like, oh no, bitches like this."
No, that's great, man. And so when somebody tells you you're born to do something, man, it's like, all right, well, at least I'm gonna try it out. Especially if like he knows you. I don't know who it was, but that's when somebody tells you got to do that. I mean, and that's kind of the reason I got into it too. Like growing up, people, you know, I was class clown of my class or whatever senior year, and like what people say, like my review a lot of the times is like pretty funny, but also slightly offensive.
Sure, yeah, yeah. A lot of us get that, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good line to cross.
That's a comment I got a lot. And like I went to like a small liberal school and like was a theater major there. And so these people are actually very conservative minded people in a sense, in the sense of they didn't really like other kind of ideologies, you know?
Yeah.
And so I often was cited as being like, you know, too flagrant. Yeah, too dirty, bro. Too like, going too offensive. Why'd you have to say that like that?
I mean, yeah, in comedy, I think a lot of the point in comedy. So for me, like starting out, like, yeah, it helps when people are all telling you like you're pretty funny and you got that thing, but like going back to it, like even further, like my dad was always that dad, you know, at the dinner table just telling like stupid ass like long jokes that take like an hour to tell, and it's just like a fart joke at the end or something like that, you know.
Sure.
And that was always something that was very like, at the end of the day, something that really stuck out to me was him always like, you know, he'd be putting me to bed and be like, all right, you gotta tell me like one thing that was funny that happened to you today. And I was like, every day we'd be like, all right, you gotta get something funny. So I was like, it really just kind of took for me, and again kind of rolled into my personality a little bit. And I like to imagine that I'm so deep, I'm deep enough that I like to think back of like the oral history of stories being passed down from like, you think about like the Odyssey and the Iliad and like Shakespeare, like those things were passed down orally a lot of the time, and a lot of them have a lot of humor in it, whether it's hidden like double entendres, you know, whether you notice it or not. But I think comedy is just very important in general.
You see, like I can identify with the second half you said about these stories, because I've always been into stories, and I read those kind of stories like Iliad and Odyssey like in middle school. Right. I just read them because I liked them. And when I was in like college, like I did theater, you know, so we had two theater history classes. We of course all throughout different classes had to study and read a bunch of that stuff, Shakespeare stuff, you know, Milton stuff, like stuff by like crazy, you know, just like August Wilson, up and down, like so many different people. And like it's just as you said, like it's a rich oral tradition. A lot of times they get based off of, but also in their times they were like actually having parties. Theater was a lot different back then. When Shakespeare was doing their shit, people were drinking, people were like, talking, they were flirting with each other, they were like treating it more like a club, you know, very active, very raunchy, and like the actors had to speak over all that, you know.
Interesting.
And so like that was really crazy. But no, my family was a very serious family. So like they were not one of these like humorous people. They were very like, you know, stoic people.
Sure.
So like, I felt a lot of times maybe a yearning to say, I wish y'all laughed more. You know?
Right. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I got siblings.
Well, I was gonna say I heard something like a lot of the time. I don't know if you're like oldest, youngest, like whatever, but I'm the youngest. And I heard a lot of the time the youngest is the funny one, because they're always trying to break the tension of like the seriousness of what's going on with the older siblings, like fucking up or whatever, you know.
Yeah. I was the youngest for a while. Okay. I do have a little brother now, but he's only 13. And so for a lot of years, I was like the youngest.
Okay, so it's probably similar.
Maybe, maybe something to that.
For sure. But yeah, and then I again kind of went along the same path around high school time. I actually started with like, it was more of like YouTube videos, and then Bo Burnham came into my life, and then
that guy's so crazy.
He is wild. I mean, I cringe at a lot of his stuff now, a lot of his older stuff, but so does he, so it makes me feel better.
This first song is called A World on Fire. This next song, it's a little bit longer than that one.
So yeah, Inside was like very, I think, for him, like progressing forward, I think it was a really good move for him because he was trying to disassociate with that like older kind of childish humor he was doing and move forward with more sophisticated stuff while still like touching on some of the childish like kind of concepts that he had, I think.
Yeah, and you got to go through that. Like we wouldn't get him now without the version of him then. You know, it takes a while to find out like your real authentic like artistic voice, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, and that's where so like progressing forward. Well, I guess so. When did you do stand up for the first time? When was your first show?
So we're now in July, January, February, March, April. I think I did my first show in May. It must have been.
Really?
I think so.
Oh,
and I
so
didn't do
that's
a lot in
pretty
May. I did it like towards the tail end of May or something like that. I know I did it at Punchline, and then I didn't do it again for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
I was just like visiting different spots, like skulking it out type stuff.
Right.
Yeah, seeing how the schedule was, seeing how the flow was.
Yeah, I got you.
You know, I had a little bit of nervousness.
And I definitely my kind of journey with it is a little weird. So like I started back like I've been since high school kind of been so after Bo Burnham I got into like Louis and Mike Birbiglia and Tom Segura, like all
great guys.
Yeah, and I knew I always wanted to try it. So as soon as I got into college, I was like, all right, this is when I'm gonna start. This is when I'm gonna start doing it. And I went and tried to look for some open mics in at Ohio University. And there was this one place called Donkey Cafe that I went. They had an open mic, and I go in on like a Tuesday.
What year was this?
My freshman year of college,
okay.
so 2017.
Okay.
I think. And I go in and I sit down and I walk in on like some girl telling a poem about how she was like brutally like abused or
Classic
something.
college
like,
shit.
Dude,
Classic
yeah.
college shit.
And I was like, this is not where I need to be. And like she gets off and everyone starts snapping like for her, dude.
It's like an open mic for everybody, not just that's like a variety show.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I felt very uncomfortable and I was like not gonna go up and do anything. I didn't even really have anything planned. Like I was just kind of scouting it out.
Sure.
But I had some ideas that were in my head. And then actually, so like they were just they didn't have a list or anything, which I thought they were just like, all right, who wants to go next? People just like hop up there. And nobody went up like after the person that I went in. And somebody hopped up. She's like, yeah, I don't have anything like prepared, but I could tell some stories from like band camp or something, you know? And she like told some funny stories and like people were laughing with her. I'm like, okay, like, all right.
Break the tension, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like,
up a bit.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, like I think I could follow this up. I could try to follow this up. And I actually ended up like hopping up there right after that. And it was very interesting because it was not like like I said, nothing was prepared. I just had like the bullet points in my head and kind of, you know, we get 5-minute sets now. I was probably up there for 10 minutes just rambling on about shit, dude. Yeah, no, it was not good. But I got laughs. I got the snaps. It gave me that little hope, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to bring me back. I don't know what happened, but I kind of just lost it. I started working after that too and kind of like just got lost in the job. But then my summer after sophomore year, started going out in Cincinnati and did like 5 shows over the summer. But like I tell people, like a Tuesday crowd in Cincinnati versus like a Tuesday crowd in Philly, you're gonna have like 5 people in the Cincinnati crowd.
Okay.
And when you come to Philly on a Tuesday, you're at least gonna have 6. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's you know, it's very different. So like coming out here, like, and I've throughout high school and college, I've always written down little things that make me laugh or something that I think I could use for stand up.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to actually come out here, start doing it regularly, not just come up and do like a one-off thing or like a couple of things, but do it regularly, do the same jokes and actually work on them and pull from that well of like ideas that I had.
So you said that you started doing it again like sophomore summer, and then were you doing them like sporadically throughout college, or did you like kind of slow down after that and didn't do them at all?
Well, yeah, so I went back to school and I didn't have like any open mics and I worked a lot during school, and then COVID hit and I graduated my junior year. So
What'd you major in?
Hospitality, like it matters.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the reason I majored in that is just because it's the easiest major you can get.
Okay.
Basically, all the classes are like just be nice to people. That's pretty much it. Customer service. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
So,
What'd you do for work while you were doing college?
Hospitality. So I was like serving and bartending, and
okay.
You know, that's why I couldn't. Again, like you do that during the nighttime. You can't do stand up when you're bartending on like Friday night or something. You know. So yeah, So after that, COVID hit, and I actually started wanted to do it more, but I couldn't go out. And what I ended up doing was like printing out transcripts of like Dave Chappelle or like Louis C.K. and trying to start to like break it down by like the setup and like the punchline.
Okay.
And, like, kind of like, you know, get the back workings of it and see if I can apply that to what I'm going to start doing once everything, you know, once I moved out here and everything started opening back up. But then I found out that, you know, after breaking those down, it's like, oh, these guys are thousands of times like better than I will ever be. You know what I mean?
It's both and because I think that like, you know, we all kind of start off sounding like somebody else, you know, sounding like the people we admire. Whatever we like get into it usually because someone modeled something that we thought was cool.
Right.
And so like, you know, it makes sense, but at the same time, like we don't realize we're all the time tracking that stuff. At least I think a little bit that's how it was with me. Like the whole time listening to those people, like you know, it like success leaves clues, you know. And even if you're a poor imitation of somebody who's like the best, then you're not doing that bad.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting back in the day, so I started reading into like George Carlin and Richard Pryor and some of the older comics, and they actually used to do each other's sets. Like when they would go up and like, hey, let me try your set tonight. You'd be like, yeah, man, try it out, and like they would test it and like kind of see what the rhythm and flow of it was behind it and kind of work it, you know, at their own angle, I guess. Which is really interesting, like now actually going up regularly for a couple months now. Well, I'm curious, so like, you know, how did your first set go? Like, did you bomb completely or, you know, like...
No, it wasn't a complete bomb.
Yeah.
No, man.
Yeah.
My first set was not that bad, man.
Okay.
I feel like, it's not like they say it was like roaring laughter or anything like that.
Sure.
But I feel like I got a decent amount of chuckles my first set.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice crowd that day.
And then, like, moving forward, so, like, for me, again, like, this far in, I've had a lot of, like, reconstruction with my content. So, like, the first time I went up, I was just telling, like, a story, you know, straight through, and kind of, like, there were funny parts of the story, but I didn't have any timing to it. I didn't have any, like, actual, like, jokes that I fit in. It was just more about the story and, like, funny things that happen, you know what I mean? Whereas now, like, I progress, it's like, all right, I need to have, like, a go-to punch, you know, like a go-to one-liner if I need it, you know what I mean? And then if that works, maybe build off of that, like grab people's attention with that, and then kind of work through that, you know, that structure a little bit. Have you, like, experienced anything like that, or you kind of just cut out? You were telling me a little bit, because you have a similar style with your stories, I think, talking about making it more efficient, right?
That was definitely a thing. Like, I'm a wordy guy. And so, like, I feel like that was the feedback, especially from that first one that I did, and even the second one, especially the second one, I might actually say. But I just talked over the time. And so, like, I thought, like, oh, 5 minutes is not enough to do the things that I'm doing. But then I thought about it again, and I think, like, it 100% is, because you got to get tight. And so, like, I think, like, hey, man, there's, like, oftentimes when you go through something and how it went, and you just gotta like chop stuff down. And I think it's natural for us because we watch so many other people do it, and that's some of the things that's cool about the open mic structure as it is, because like it forces us to see intermediate and like more expert level comedians come up, and like we see like, look, I want to get bigger reactions. And so like at the end of the day, like it's about what I want, but it's also like, fuck it, I see what works. And so I'm like, yo, if I own what it is, premises and punchlines, then I'll get more of that reaction in the way I want to. And isn't that the goal, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It's you got to be very efficient with your words up there, man. Because like if you stray just like a little bit, you know, people are gonna start like looking at their beer, trying to get another drink, you know, talking with who they came with, kind of, and you really want to keep their attention that whole time, because if they're listening, a lot of times, you know, we know we're funny, right? You know, it just takes people, you know, listening and kind of hearing you out on what you think is funny, I guess.
It's both, because I mean, you say we know we funny, but some people think they are, but they're not doing as well as other people are doing.
That's true.
And
that's
like
fair.
that's based on a couple of different things, because a lot of it goes into different stuff. But I do think at the heart of it, like performing is more about writing, and I think that these people who are really really good at writing, that shows. You know.
Yeah. And so like, kind of pivoting a little bit, like I want to talk about people that do it like one time and then people that do it regularly, you know what I mean? Because like going up that first time, it can be a make or break moment for a lot of people. I don't know if you've seen anybody, like I had a guy I worked with that came out and was like watching the shows, and I started doing it, and he's like, you know what, I think I want to go up there and do it, man. And then when he was like, the host was like, hey man, you're going up next or something, he's like, dude, he started freaking out, you know what I mean? He was just like, dude, my heart is beating. I don't know if I can do this. And he actually, like, left. Like, he quit. But some people go up there, they do it once, and they're like, well, I tried it. And then they cut it out from there, and it's just it makes me feel a little bit better about myself, because like it's like, hey, that's something that I can do that somebody can't. But it also is it's very interesting to see the different types of people that can and can't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Seinfeld has that joke, right? Like he mentions that thing about like the fact that like a lot of people would rather chew off their own arm than speak in public.
Right.
And then he goes into that whole joke about this concept of like, yeah, so that means that if you're at a funeral, you would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. You know, it's a big fear that a lot of public recognizes, and people see that as a sense of bravery, and that's something that's important to try to have. But at the same time, you realize that like bravery is only a measure about your personal self. And so you got to be careful, because like you need to be comparing yourself against yourself, because it's about where your comfort zone is. Sure. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, some people are okay doing certain things just by, it seems, genetics, you know, like they just feel at ease doing certain activities. And so blessed are you to find something that you feel comfortable doing. You know, and I think that like I that's what it calls for. Because for me, I think pretty nervous. I would have done it sooner if I wasn't so nervous. But also I had years of doing like other kinds of performing, and I think that like that stuff helps like chill me out. And so like I'm like, oh, I can kind of understand a little bit, because like I was doing almost 7 years of theater before I even tried to do this kind of thing. And so like I feel like I sense it, and then there are people who say like, cool, I'm gonna try it, and I try it and I don't like it, and I don't agree with the concept of like trying something once. And that's kind of what I've been saying to myself. A lot of times people ask me, I say like I'm seeing if it's something I enjoy, and I just feel like it's something that you enjoy. It takes more than one time to really get at it, you know. Like I feel like for something like this, like you got to do it 30 times, 40 times before you can really say like, oh, this is my flex, you know. I can get into it, because it's not just like the reaction from stage, it's like the whole lifestyle of it all. You gotta realize that this is like real, like gritty blue collar performing. Like you can go a lot of years without making a lot of money, and like you would be awake for a lot of hours and spend a lot of other hours just trying to keep up, you know. And like that's what it's like when it's like people go once, because I'm like, at that point for me, I'm like, I just want to keep up. I want to keep up with the other freshmen, you know. I want to make sure I graduate. And I think that like you realize that if you skip class too much, it's not going to happen that way. And eventually all these other people, they're gonna go off to other opportunities, and you're gonna be working the circuit the same way, because like you weren't really trying to do it here and there. And at that point, like, yeah, you should bail out, you know, because it's a tough thing, and like you only want people who really fuck with it to stay with it. Right.
Yeah, when I asked you, I was, you know, you're like, yeah, I always try something for like what you said, like 6 months or something before I like really.
I just pick a unit that makes sense for whatever that thing is in my mind, you know. And so I felt like for this, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be doing it at least 40 times, because I feel like with 6 months, like it goes back to that thing, like if you only go up 4, 5, 10 times in 6 months, you're not really getting to it. You know? And so like that's it.
Yeah, and I mean you could see that like I knew that I was gonna enjoy stand up, but it took me some time to like work into it over the years. You know, I came in and came out a little bit, and now that I'm here doing it regularly, like I'm really starting to get that like kind of drive for it. You know, that kind of like that feel a little bit when you work on jokes and you know they work. I think that, and you have like a good set, I think that's what really drives me, because then the next time you have a bad set, you're like, well, I need to work it back up so that it works again. You know what I mean? I need to figure out what I did wrong this time and figure out what I didn't do, you know, and put it together.
That's it. And because I also, in a way, like I can't totally identify with whack niggas. I really can't, bro. Like almost every single time I do it, people give me a good reaction from it.
Okay.
And so I'm like, yo, like, and it's not just like the people who like pound you, like, because I feel like people just like to be nice for sure. It tend to be, there's a healthy mix of people who literally just come up to me and say like, you know, you're doing cool stuff. And I feel like you got to also be getting positive reinforcement from what you're working on. And if you're not, that can be frustrating, understandably, because I've been in other arenas where I haven't gotten it like that, and like it's been frustrating. And so I think you find out where you bail on what you want to bail at, but I also think that like if you learn from your past, you want to give yourself a fair shot at whatever your interest might be. And like, yo, I really get to that, like stand-up comedy is the heart of like making comedy. And so there's a lot of different kinds of ways of doing the public speaking thing, but to be funny is like the heart of it. And so there's plenty of spin-off gigs, and I'm like, yo, those spin-off gigs will be easier to do if you cut your teeth here. And there's plenty of people who are not that good at stand-up who stick with it hard enough to learn how to write well. You know, and then they write all different types of things: skits, movies, TV shows, like plays. They like get into like, you know, hosting all different kinds of ways. They MC in different versions of it. They get into corporate life, then they do a bunch of corporate-based gigs. They give like instruction. There's a lot of different ways to spin it off once you can start to make people beat a laugh on the rhythm that you want to make them laugh on.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing that I wanted to bring up about kind of starting out. And I'm still very new to the idea of like, I'm scared of crowd work, basically, and that's something that I needed to dive into to get over. But like, so this week was the first time. This past week was the first time that I went twice during the week. I know you go 5 days a week, which I mean, hats off to you. But like, this is I don't want to get into why, just because I mean, you got a lot of energy, and I'm a very slow person sometimes. Just kind of getting into it. But the point being, I've been going to 2th Street, which is it's like a divey bar. They have a stage that you're up on. It's kind of darker, so when you go there on Tuesdays, pretty much you get their attention pretty easily. People listen to you a little bit, and it's very you can try things out and have it work or go off well, or people know that you're trying it out. Whereas like I went to South House on Wednesday. And that place is so much different, dude, because that's like a restaurant, right? And they basically just move a table out of the way and put a microphone there. So instead of like other comics and like kind of people like paying attention and listen to you try stuff out and like work it out, you got people that are like drunk as hell, talking, having conversations, and you really got to be able to like...
You write about it.
Yeah, you really got to like bring them in and like kind of like if you're trying like a joke that has a long setup, you're gonna lose half the room before you get to that punchline.
Here's also like what runs through my mind about stuff. Like I have a little bit of a running joke, but also what I think is a solid hypothesis that like you get funnier the higher up you are from the audience. And so I think that like elevation makes the humor. And I think at 2th Street you get a stage and at least you're slightly above all the other people, so it's easier to get their attention. And at South House they put us level, like you said, they just push a table away.
Right.
And so like I think that like that's part of the whole like game of it all. Because I think that like you kind of said this thing about like crowd work, and I think like crowd work is a way of building confidence, and it's fun to get into it if it's your thing. Mm-hmm. But honestly, it's also cool because in a way I'm like, the higher up you get, the less you do crowd work. Crowd work works in the clubs, and they'll work in bars and restaurants at these open mics. Mm-hmm. But once you try to do theaters and try to do sketches, like you're not going to be doing crowd work like that,
Yeah, that's true.
And so the higher up and the more like mass appeal you're trying to get, the less accessible you're going to be able to get at when this comes to this crowd work stuff. That's like stuff about the clubs. Mm-hmm. And like it's also a way of like eating up time that I'm not too sure all the way is like a sophisticated way to go about using your time,
right?
Because I think like when I use it, I understand that I'm also filling up time. Mm-hmm. And I was, this happened to me last week. I thought like, oh, the set went okay, like I got a fair amount of chuckles or whatever, but I had planned a lot more actual material to work on that I liked, and I didn't get to it because like it took me too long to get through the back and forth I was having with one of the audience members. And I think like, look, bro, it's only 5. If you take up a minute doing it, like minute 30, I think people see like, yo, you're not doing a full 5 in material. You're doing this back and forth with an audience member.
Well, I agree 100%. I understand that. There is something to be said for, like, I've talked to some experienced comedians, and they're like, you don't have to use that full 5 minutes if you don't want to. You know what I mean? You can go up there and try what you want and build it, do what you're feeling, mm-hmm. but you don't have to be there for that. And that's true. That's a really good experience, like, something that I learned from an experienced comic around here. But yeah, so I also wanted to talk about, so I guess that's kind of like, building on that and kind of working towards that. That's as far as I've gotten in the process with kind of working on my humor and kind of working and breaking down my writing process and kind of the style of the jokes I want to try out. But, one thing I did want to talk about was just the experience at that the people that come to the open mics regularly and people that you see come like every once in a while. Like, you get such a fun crowd. Like, you'll get people that are older, unemployed doing stand-up.
Yeah.
We had one week where some lady just showed her titties on stage.
I wasn't there for that, but, like, yeah.
But then the next week we had, like, a dude kind of wander in that was on some sort of drugs and, like, almost got in a fight with another
I was there
dude.
for that.
Yeah. So, I don't know. If do you have any funny stories specifically of, like, any open mics that you've been to that had, like, anything wild happen?
Wow. I guess you named the main one. I think that thing about that homeless guy coming through. Yeah, when we're out south, like, yeah, those are the places that, like, those kind of things end up happening for some reason. But like that punchline that doesn't go down that way. And so like, yeah, no, I think that like, I can't say I have, and like so far I've done about 19 shows.
Okay. Would you like to tell that story of that thing that happened after Raven that one time where you like went out with those people? Right now, I can cut this out.
Wait, like what story after I went out with Raven?
Where you got like hooked up with some drug dealers.
That is kind of funny. You're right, bro. You're right. Because like I was outside of Ravens, just like kicking it the way people do across the street from Ravens, and like I was somewhat in this conversation. No. Here's what happened. Like there was some tall guy there who like was like, "Yo, man, I'm gonna go over there and like talk to these girls. You wanna come with me?" And I was like, "All right, cool, no problems."
Real quick. Can we give a little background of Raven? What the fuck Raven is, dude?
I mean, Raven is just a legendary open mic spot, man.
It's
They might be
burlesque place, dude. It's sticky in there. One of the comedians has a joke about doing crack cocaine in the bathroom.
Sure. But again, that's the underbelly, man. That's the real heart of most things. And I think that, like, for one, I give them first and foremost props for being such a long-running open mic and supporting amateur comedians in Philly for so long and so consistently and giving them a spot 2 nights a week, bro, to do their stuff. And like, yeah, I think that like all the rest of that stuff is true, but big up to all the hosts there that like, y'all have been able to make that happen so consistently and give us a place to be raw, bro, because there's a lot of places where you feel like you can't say whatever, but in Ravens, people feel comfortable saying whatever, and that's really how you get to your funny, you know. And so I think that that's a place where people are like, I'm not afraid to throw out those words that maybe they think they're gonna get canceled for in other places, you know.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so like, much love to them, and like, yeah, y'all can go ahead and take a mop to that place more often, that's for sure. But I think that like, yeah, Ravens is this multi-level spot where one level is comedy, other levels are dancing and drinking and hanging out, and you can meet all different types of people in the heart of the city, you know,
including this tall gentleman.
Yeah, right. And so we were talking, I forget what we were even talking about, but like, this is one of those things that should happen. Like, I'm just in the back, he was vaping, I was vaping, chilling with him, and we went outside, he bought me like browns. All right, cool, man. We went to go kick it, and he like mentions to this girl, and like, this girl's like playing with her knife, and he's like talking to her about like, yo, what's going on with this knife? And she's like, yeah, I'd rather have a knife than a gun or whatever. And she's just got one other girl, clearly the other girl's the leader one, and like she was shorter slightly, and like so they're showing each other this knife tricks. I'm like talking to the other person. This guy goes away, and another guy comes up who's like a black guy with dreads, and he's got a camera. I thought he was working this event, but he said like, no, he just came here with the camera from I guess some other thing. All right, cool, bro. And so like we actually end up talking until like 1:30, 2 in the morning, and these girls are crazy because the leader one was coming at me like, yo, man, if you really want to get with these millennial chicks, you gotta like get them to believe that you'll suck dick. Yeah, bro. And I was like, I don't know if that's true, man. He's like, nah, just tell them that you've like done 3-ways with like guys before and shit like that. And I was like, I don't know, man. And she was like 23, I think, and then the sidekick taller one was like 26 or some shit like that.
Okay.
And so like it's 2:00 now. Ravens closed. They call a lift and they ask us if we want to come back with them. All right, cool. Yeah, we'll come back, no problem. And so we drive to some place. I think it's in South Philly actually. And while we get there, and there's some girl like bawling her eyes out in front of their place, and this girl's bawling her eyes out because of some like relationship shit, like her and her girlfriend are going through whatever. And so like the alpha one and like the dreads guy stay downstairs to like consult her a bit, and me and the sidekick one whose apartment it was went upstairs. And like the moment you get up there, first of all, you walk through like what feels like really musty. You just immediately get heavy when you walk in there. Yeah. And then you walk up a flight. And then you walk up like a spiral staircase made of aluminum. I don't know why it was like this. It was like, I don't know, very fancy for what was going on. Yeah. And the first thing you see are like stacks of magazines, all gnats and fruit flies throughout the whole thing. Ooh. And when you clear that shit out the way, there's just a stripper pole going straight down the middle. And she's like, yeah, man, I've been a stripper since I was 14. And I was like, oh, wild. And she really does hop on that pole and like fucking puts on a crazy ass couple moves. Like she's very expert at this shit. Yeah. And the right is just like huge ass cage with one single pigeon in it.
A pigeon?
And, yeah, bro. It's her pet. And she's like, yeah, well, later on, if you want, I'll let him out. And if he flies on your shoulder, it's good luck.
Oh,
shit people say when they're white. And so, like, eventually the other two come up, and we're, like, smoking weed, chilling. Like, they didn't have any papers. We, like, rolled up some books. They have the fanciest books I've seen, like, in a while. Like, I read those kind of books, but, like, for these kind of people, I'm like, they got, like, Dostoevsky in there. Like, they have, like, very complicated, like, Plato, Socrates. Like, these people are reading very complex material, and they're, like, talking to me about it. Like, they really actually wrote them shits.
Oh shit.
And then so eventually she pulls out a guitar and like we end up just like beatboxing and she's like playing the guitar and singing and like we do that till like 3:30, 4 in the morning, bro. Before I like piece the fuck out, you know? And like it went straight like that. We didn't even hook up with them chicks. We just like chatted and fucking around with like music shit and like, shot the shit on random issues. One of these girls were being very aggressive with me about black rights issues, but I guess maybe whatever. Ugh, you know? She's trying to tell me about this and tell me about that. Like I don't fucking know. All I know is I'm right.
Yeah.
I know.
Right.
I've never been fucking wrong before.
Yeah, and that's really what I love about the city so far is just the fucking messes and adventures you can get into, dude. Like as long as you don't judge people right off the bat, like you can get into any sort of fucking.
But you also got to come correct, bro. I feel like y'all coming through a little too friendly, bro. Y'all got this vibe of being too nice. I feel like that shit with the Lyft drivers, bro. Like I was like, yo, if you a Philly, you can't be letting people just punk you randomly, son. I feel like you would get way of patches, but they want to know that you tough. They want to know that you can hang, bro. Yeah. And so I feel like they kind of rude out here. I'm not gonna lie. If I get in fights out in Philly, bro, like Philly's a rude place.
True. No, for real. Like
you coming through very aggressively to me, son.
I need to put on. Yeah, I mean, I'm from like the Midwest, the nicest place on earth, dude. Where like I was talking to you about like sidewalk etiquette, bro. Like in the Midwest, you walk by somebody, you gotta say like howdy. You know, like the whitest thing.
You guys literally say howdy out there?
Sometimes. Well, you gotta be like, hey, how's it going, or like.
Well, like, bro, what was the last time you said howdy sincerely, bro?
My dad says it every time.
When did you say howdy sincerely, bro? Why are you trying to tell me about?
Nah, that's fair. Well, I went to that more as like a joke, but like.
Cool. Yeah. So you don't be saying howdy, huh?
No, not.
Just checking.
Not sincerely.
I wanna know, bro.
It's a fun word, though.
I don't know.
I wish I could throw it in.
I'm a sociologist, bro. I'm curious.
I wish I could.
I've never been to the Midwest before.
Yeah, no. I think farther south, Kentucky, they definitely say it a lot more.
I have a friend from Kentucky, actually.
Yeah.
She's really cool.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. They're nice people. It's just they got these.
I mean, I met one out of fucking, I don't know what I assume is millions. I don't know how many Kentuckians there are, but I'm not going to tell them they're nice people and shit.
Yeah.
I got one friend, and she's definitely nice. The rest of y'all, questionable.
Yeah, but anyways, like walking around over here, you got to make sure you like keep your head down, like or sometimes they're just like kind of like be unbothered on face. Like I need to put on that tough skin, like as opposed from. Like I said, like all the nice people.
Yeah, people just want to know, you know. And so I feel like they do a lot of flexing, and I feel like it's not always gotta escalate, but they're used to like talking in what other places might perceive as like more aggressive, you know. And like my family's Jamaican, so I kind of get that whole vibe. I feel like other people come here and they think like, oh, you're being this way. I'm like, no, this is just my Philly self,
right?
You know? Because you gotta understand, you gotta get these done. I don't got time to like be fucking stopping and have long back and forth with every random person who thinks I'm a punk, you know.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the reasons I moved out here is because like people said it there that they're very rude and brash, but I'm like, but that's them being true, and that's them, you know, like living their lives, you know what I mean? They're not trying to fuck around and, you know, waste people's time or anything like that. So I get that. So
yeah, they gotta know if you're gonna call the police.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they gotta know that quick, early in our relationships.
Exactly. All right. So moving forward, what you got planned? I mean, how you've been doing it for a while now? You thinking about doing it for another few months or?
Yeah, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I've done 19 so far, so I figured maybe I try to get myself to a 40. Maybe I try to get myself to a 40.
To a 40?
We'll see how it goes, man, because I think, like, also what I was kind of saying earlier, like, I think I don't want to lose sight of the real game here, and I a little bit sometimes feel like I get caught up in the lifestyle a bit, and the lifestyle is so young for me already, but, like, I'm just such like an energetic dude, you know, and I think the reason why I really got into the game is to see if I could become more funny. You know, and the way to become more funny on stage, mostly, you know, it's a lot of getting on stage, but it's a lot of like putting the time in to write. Oh, yeah. And to do what you said, like actually do the structure stuff, because that's gonna judge whether or not you can get gigs. Right. And so I think like, hey, like a performing job is really a writing job, and like a job is still a job. And so if I can't find a way to put 2 or 3 hours a day into my schedule when I'm really trying to whip it, then like I'm not trying to do this just so I have a place that like hang out and make buddies. Like yeah, like I kind of like you were mentioning with these people who come and drop in 1 or 2 times. I think there's also people who come around here fairly often, but they're here just to like make friends and socialize, and so they want the whole the being funny part to come easy. And I think like, oh, that's fine and well and good, but like that's not why I'm really trying to get into it. Sure. It's fine to make all these cool people, but for real, I'm like, oh, like can I get good enough at being funny to make this like a thing that I don't have to like not get paid about, right. You know? Yeah, I want to do something I can step away from other gigs and make a fair amount of thing and like move around and see more of the country, see more of the world.
Absolutely, absolutely, dude. Can you imagine doing like stand up in a room full of people who don't speak your language?
I do think about it.
Yeah,
You know, I think
uncomfortable.
about the idea of even learning because Tom Segura mentions that shit too.
Oh,
Like he does
yeah.
full Spanish shows.
Oh
You know?
yeah, which would that's impressive. But
And then George Lopez, goats in the game. Like some of these people could do it in both. I'm like, yo, over a certain amount of time, like, yeah, I would love to learn comedic timing in another language.
well, that's good to hear, man. And like that's what I mean. Another reason I like hanging out with you is very you got that energy, you got that head. You know, you're like kind of the head towards a goal, a direction, like working on yourself in the game. And if it doesn't work out, not losing sight of what what your end result is, I suppose. So, I mean, I appreciate you coming out here to talk about stand up with me, man. You got any like shouts out or anything you you want to throw on the end here?
Oh, nah, man. No, this is a really good conversation. I appreciate it for sure, bro.
Yeah,
You know, shouts out to you for putting the time together.
All right, man. Thanks again. Hell yeah. Another episode in the books. One thing before I let y'all go, I just did want to kind of say, I think personally, yes, stand-up comedy is about routine and how often you do it, how many reps you get in. I was actually just talking with a comedian last Wednesday about how he even compared it to like the Kobe video where he's just like, I work out for 2 hours in the morning, then I take a break, and then 2 hours here, 2 hours there. Then by the end of the week, I've worked out like 30 more times than you have while you're just working out once every day. So definitely makes sense. But I think there is something to be said for everybody's learning style too. Like you're an individual. So yes, you need to get those reps in. But I think there are the whole reason I wanted to do this podcast in the first place was because it really helps me to think about how other comedians break it down, actually. So, there's just something to be said for that. And in general, there's a lot of different ways to come at anything that you're doing. And stand-up is no different than that. So I hope you learned a lot. I hope you had fun listening. And I appreciate you coming back. If this is your first time, welcome. Follow me on Instagram at Steve McJ. It's where I post most of the promotions. Thanks again, Everton, for coming out and recording with me. And I hope you all have a great week. Thank you so much. I love you, man. Okay, bye.
I'm Woody. Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Aha, aha, give me that.